Hey guys, what's going on? It's Riley back here for Real Takes. I am back with another movie review. I just got back from seeing Damien Chazelle's new movie, First Man. And this one is certainly going to be an awards player as we get into award season. Obviously, we saw Star is Born last week. Max and I reviewed that. If you guys want to check that out, that is up on the podcast feed as well as up on our YouTube channel. So with First Man, let's jump right into it with Damien Chazelle back. He won a Best Director statue for La La Land a couple of years ago, and obviously directed the fantastic Whiplash. And he's also directed a movie called Guy and Madeline on a Park Bench, which I have not seen, heard great things about. I plan on checking it out, hopefully. It's on Filmstruck, I think, is where I saw it. But anyway, so Chazelle is back with First Man, kind of stepping out of the normal musical sort of style that he has become known for with his first couple of films. And the movie stars Ryan Gosling, Claire Foy, Jason Clarke, Kyle Chandler, Corey Stoll, Kieran Hines, Patrick Fugit. I can't remember how to pronounce his name. And the movie is about Neil Armstrong and his moon landing. Neil Armstrong in the film is played by Ryan Gosling, and the movie sort of focuses on his life, but also the different relationships that he has with his fellow astronauts and with his wife and with his children. And the movie takes definitely a more personal look at this story rather than kind of the overarching story of the moon landing. And overall, I thought this movie was absolutely fantastic. On a technical level, it is terrific. On an acting level, Ryan Gosling is really the star of this film. Everybody else turns in really solid kind of supporting performances, of the quality that you'd expect from guys like Jason Clarke, Kyle Chandler, Corey Stoll. The woman who plays Jason Clarke's wife is also pretty solid in this movie. Her name escapes me, and unfortunately, she's not on this cast list I'm looking at. But Claire Foy also has some time to shine here, and I thought she was great as well. But really, overall, the strongest parts of this movie are definitely Gosling's performance, as well as the technical aspects of this movie, which I want to get into because this movie is shot so brilliantly. Chazelle reteaming with his Academy Award-winning cinematographer from La La Land, Linus Sandgren, returns to shoot this movie, and there are so many aspects of this film that Chazelle really makes a lot of interesting choices with the camera and how he chooses to kind of frame up and shoot certain scenes. There's an intense focus on close-ups in the film, which I think really works. It really helps kind of bring together that intimacy and that personal touch that this movie has when it comes to its central character, played like I mentioned very well. But we'll get to the performances here in a second. But really, kind of getting back to the technical aspects of this movie, there are some really, really great, intense sequences. They're not big action set pieces, but they're really more intimate, sort of claustrophobic, self-contained scenes. For example, when Neil Armstrong and his partner go up in the Gemini 8, is a brilliantly filmed scene where you really, you can kind of feel and hear everything rattling. And that's the other thing is, this movie has excellent sound design from start to finish. I mean, you really feel Damien Chazelle really wants to put you inside a lot of these spacecrafts, and you feel inside it, and you feel the terror, and you feel the dread of the entire situation. And I thought that was absolutely brilliant choice by Chazelle in that regard to this movie. But let's move on and talk a little bit about some of the performances, because I could talk all night about how flawlessly executed this movie is on a technical level. But really, the performances this is Gosling's movie, and the story really focuses on Neil Armstrong, kind of starting in 1961 and sort of telling this large scope story about Armstrong's eventual path to landing on the moon. And I thought Ryan Gosling's performance was very, not so much out of his wheelhouse. He's very nuanced. He's very soft-spoken at times. He never really has any emotional blow-ups. And so for me, as far as looking at Gosling's body of work as a whole, that he's not really stretching, but he does really turn in a really solid performance. As of right now, from what I have seen, I would think he'd get an Oscar nomination for this. I'm not sure. It just depends on how the rest of the year plays out. We've got some heavyweight stuff coming out. For example, Christian Bale obviously looks great in Vice. We're hearing good things about Rami Malek in Bohemian Rhapsody. But Gosling really carries this movie on the strength of his dynamic with all of his fellow astronauts, and as well as his wife, who I mentioned, played by Claire Foy. And he really dives deep into this character, and the way Chazelle and Sangren choose to really focus on his eyes, and these close-up shots really brings the emotion out of this movie. And I thought Ryan Gosling did a fantastic job in the film as well. And I think he has a great character. Like, you really get to see the progression of, quiet, sort of, reserved Neil Armstrong to, after seeing the costs and the toll that this movie, that the events in this film, that progress and happen, you really get to see a really interesting character progression, come through in Neil Armstrong and Gosling's performance. A lot of people, one of the criticisms I've read about this movie that I don't understand, having seen it, a lot of people have found Claire Foy's character, she plays Janet Armstrong, obviously, Neil Armstrong's wife, and a lot of people thought her character is unlikable. I think she does a great job exuding sort of this strength when she has to, because of the gravity, no pun intended, of this mission that her husband's embarking on, and he's cold about it, and he's sort of, his worldview is maybe a little bit jaded after a tragic event in their lives. But ultimately, I did find Claire Foy to be great in this movie. I'm not sure where the unlikableness comes from. She gets a little tough sometimes, maybe challenging him, really challenging Neil Armstrong, and that's such an interesting dynamic that she challenges him to really kind of step up and be there and accept the consequences after watching. Obviously, this is a spoiler-free review. I mean, it's hard to spoil history, but there's some astronauts who come to some tragic ends, and Claire Foy doesn't want that for her husband, and she certainly doesn't want her husband to leave to go on this mission that he may not come back from without speaking to his children. So I thought those moments, those kind of quiet character moments, were really powerful. More so, the thing that impressed me, one of the most things, is what I took away from this movie ultimately is that this is a very patriotic film, in the sense that when you look at kind of the scope of this mission, and like I mentioned, it takes place over the course of 8 years, between 1961 and 1969, and all the Gemini missions, which they go a certain way, and then of course the Apollo missions, eventually culminating in Apollo 11, which is the moon landing with Corey Stoll playing Buzz Aldrin. He doesn't pop up much in the movie, but he's there. He's great. Clark is great. Chandler's great. But getting back to this sort of sense of patriotism, and I think I think this movie is really strong in kind of showing you, this is what America used to be. We used to have these great big ideas and these great big dreams. And I think that's a really powerful sentiment. It is, I think most people will probably not come out of this thinking that it's a patriotic film, but I really think it is, in the sense that it really shows a portrait of America, back in a time when, we were still politically divided with Vietnam going on and all of these things. But I thought it did an excellent job of really showing, having that sense of time and place, and kind of showing that we weren't afraid to dream big. Kind of when America was flourishing back in the early to, well, really the entire, the decade of the 60s, where we were, politically awake and all of that kind of stuff. We're not going to get, not trying to get into a political discussion here. Overall, I guess my point is just that this movie, is just really a really interesting snapshot, personally done portrait of 60s America and what this event meant to not only the astronauts, but really to the world and to what we were doing. And you could tell it meant a lot to them. So, overall, again, kind of wrapping things up here, I thought the movie was absolutely fantastic. I think you should definitely go see it. If nothing else, for just some of the more technical things you can appreciate out of this movie, even if you don't like the story. It is around 2 hours and 10 minutes. Its official runtime says 2:18. I'm assuming that's with credits. It really does not feel like you're in the theater for 2 hours and 10 minutes. If I have any kind of complaints with this movie, like I mentioned, I don't think Ryan Gosling is doing anything here that you haven't seen him do before. I do think the ending wraps up a little bit on a not anticlimactic, but it does wrap up a little bit. It's hard to explain, because in order, if you haven't seen the film, it's hard to explain the ending. But I mean, obviously the ending of the movie. But what I'm trying to say is that there definitely is sort of a not a rushed finish, but sort of a kind of a finish where you really don't get to see the aftermath of everything that happens. And I think the movie could have definitely, I think it would have been definitely a little bit more interesting layer to the character to watch, Gosling kind of come full circle in the movie as Neil Armstrong. I feel like I'm starting to ramble a little bit. So yeah, just the length is fine. I actually would have watched another half hour of this movie, really. I mean, I just think it was so well done. And obviously got a shout out Josh Singer, who I believe wrote the script for Spotlight. He writes the script here. Damien Chazelle directs. It's impeccably crafted, in my opinion. Really like the film. You should definitely go check this one out. It is opening nationwide this weekend. Definitely playing here for all the people who, where I'm living. It's definitely playing there. So that's it. Yeah, First Man, I think it's definitely going to be in the awards consideration, probably some best picture stuff, definitely some technical stuff, cinematography, sound design, things like that. The sound design is great. The way it goes from, these loud kind of boisterous rattling moments where you feel everything rattling and then it just sucks the air out of it, when it has these very quiet, thoughtful, contemplative scenes, especially when they're on the moon. So, that's it for me. What do you guys think? Are you going to go see First Man? If you're watching this on YouTube, drop a comment below. Let us know. Subscribe to our YouTube channel as well as our podcast feed. We can be heard on places like Spotify and Google Podcasts. And anywhere, really a few, Stitcher, some solid podcast apps that you can download, whether you have iPhone or Android or whatever. And YouTube, obviously, if you don't have a smartphone. And check out a lot of our content. Unfortunately, we did not get a chance yet to put up we had a Star Wars discussion with our good buddy John, who came over when Max was in town here. And obviously we have a review for A Star is Born up. We never did get a chance to review Venom. I might post a solo review for that as well. I'll have some more reviews coming this weekend. But until then, thanks for listening, guys. Go see First Man. And until next time, we'll see you later.